Listen, we all love a good scare. We all love waking up in the middle of the night, rolling over, grinning and going, what the hell is that at the end of my bed? Now, more often than not, it's just that rapidly overflowing chair that's got all of the laundry on it. Please don't act like you don't have one. But sometimes it's something else. Sometimes it's that feeling that you've escaped, but you haven't really. With that in mind, I am Sean Ferrick for What Culture Horror, and here are the 10 scariest horror movie endings you couldn't forget. Number 10, Krampus. It's not often that a Christmas horror movie can be described as being actually good, but Krampus is one of the few that rises from the depths of the hole that contains atrocities like Silent Night, Deadly Night, Santa Claus, and Treevenge to offer up a remarkably chilling Yuletide experience. Get it? Chilling? Because it's cold in winter. Yeah. Krampus's ending stands up to the batshit standard of the rest of the movie, then revealing a monstrous, demonic, Christmas-time demon intent on punishing a young boy and his family for the rest of eternity. After battling it out against killer elves and perverted apparitions of classic Christmas entities, young Max is given the option to leave his family behind and learn from losing his Christmas spirit, or be condemned to hell with the ungrateful lot instead. Max unwittingly chooses the latter, awakening the next morning to the perfect Christmas before realizing he and his family are bound to a snow globe under the watchful eye of Krampus forevermore. Reliving Christmas every day with all of your relatives trapped in one house is a pretty gnarly punishment, even by horror movie standards. Number 9, The Descent. As has been stated many times before, The Descent is one of the finest offerings British horror cinema has in its vaults, combining classic genre turns with tightly wound tension to some seriously blood-curdling effect. And, considering how much of the human tomato juice is spilled between the group of women on their caving adventure gone wrong, the true ending of the movie, the extended full cut that wasn't clippered for American audiences, is particularly resonant when it comes to horror film finales, showing protagonist Sarah escape the deadly cave system riddled with monsters to feel sunlight on her face once more. There's no time for a tan though, as after finding a car and driving away, she's faced with an apparition of her dead friend, only to wake up from her hallucination to find herself still trapped under the earth, with the pasty creatures of the caves closing in from every angle. Oh good god, no. It's bleak, it's messy, and it's hauntingly effective, depicting Sarah's mind snapping like an old banjo string as the last of her torchlight flickers around her. Number 8, Drag Me to Hell. Where Drag Me to Hell might wobble on quality, its ending more than makes up for its mix of tones with a viscerally terrifying concept that all of Christine's efforts to stop herself from being taken to the underworld for an eternity of torture have been absolutely fruitless. Where we've watched her desperately try to outsmart both an ancient curse and a demon himself, Drag Me to Hell gives us hope that the whole situation can be called off if Christine just finds the right countermeasures to protect herself. And hey, it works in nearly every other supernatural horror movie from out there to some degree, so to watch her actually succumb to the titular fate is something of a shock. She's done everything right and earned her happy ending, getting a promotion, a lovely weekend away with her boyfriend, and a nice new coat, because why the heck not? Until, of course, it's revealed she's mixed up the return of a cursed button by simply not checking the envelope it was in, and skeletons literally pull her through the earth. Bit of a shame it's going to be so hot in hell wearing that nice new coat, really. Number 7, Don't Look Now. Don't Look Now is definitively a product of its time, feeling so inherently 70s in its production that Donald Sutherland might as well be throwing up flares for the entirety of the runtime. Instead, though, in a far better and more entertaining move, the film depicts a couple's grief at losing their daughter in a tragic accident, moving to Venice and seeing apparitions of her throughout the waterways of the city. Her father, John, follows these signs of his daughter until he comes face to face with an older woman wearing the same coat, revealing that the supernatural entity he thought he had witnessed was actually someone else entirely, and that someone else is a killer that drives a blade through his neck. John is murdered in cold blood as he realizes the visions were actually a premonition of his own death. It's a complete surprise that threads back through every clue in the movie, making what would be a terrifically dark and scary death on its own all the more poignant. Whilst it might come out of nowhere, that's exactly what doubles down on its terrifying qualities. Number 6, The Witch. There seems to be some divide on whether A24's slow burn 17th century story of a clash between paranoia and the supernatural is an effective horror movie or not, but arguably, by slapping this bone rattler of an ending on, there's no doubt that the permeating sense of unease and dread pays off in excellent fashion. After watching young Thomason continuously face off against her family as she's accused of being a witch, her black goat comes to life in the garden and asks her if she wouldst like to live deliciously. Oh, good sir, she doth. Thomason takes his offer and walks into the woods, strips naked, and joins a cohort of other naked women as they float around a fire in celebration of their newfound freedom in the name of the devil. It's beautifully shot, comes entirely left field from the uncertainty of what we had witnessed previously, where the whole movie was a question of whether coincidence, hallucination, or real-life phenomenon were at play. The ending damns it all by going fully balls out with its witchy bits. It's fantastic. Number 5, Night of the Living Dead. Literally the defining movie of the whole zombie subgenre, George A. Romero's first hack at creating the undead is one of the lasting images that horror will leave on this cold, dying planet when we've all turned to dust after our atmosphere collapses. Telling a taut story of survivors attempting to overcome the threat of decaying monsters trying to break in their house and eat them, the film follows smart and capable man Ben as he manages to last out the night as his friends are slowly picked off, only to then face an issue of a very different kind. Playing out as a terrifying ending for its human implications rather than the ones related to the living dead, Ben is only killed once the threat has been eviscerated and a group of roaming zombie killers happens upon him, unceremoniously shooting him and chucking onto a pile to burn. It's a stunningly bleak ending to a movie that appears on the surface to just be a dose of mad zombie fun, instead hiding a complicated look into society's preconceptions underneath the whole flesh-eating fiasco. Number 4, Friday the 13th. In the same vein as Nightmare on Elm Street's gotcha moment of an ending, Friday the 13th is a horror classic that decides to go in for one last terrifying moment before sending you off gentle into that good night. After working through plenty of gnarly deaths until our final girl Alice can go head to head with Pamela Voorhees, we watch as the murderous mother is decapitated and Crystal Lake seemingly brought to peace with her death. Exhausted, Alice decides to take a nap in a canoe that then drifts out over the water, as what's more relaxing than being out in the open on an isolated campground after killing someone where they stand. And just when Alice thinks everything is over, the rotting pondweed-covered corpse of Jason hops out from under the surface of the lake. He pulls her down to a watery grave for one last scare, before she then wakes up for real in hospital, so was thrown in just because we all really needed early onset heart problems and an ingrained fear of water from that point onwards. Thanks Jason, appreciate that. Number 3, Wreck. You knew this movie was going to be on this list. When you go into a found footage horror movie, you know you're going to end up with all the main characters dead one way or another. There's got to be some way the footage becomes found, after all, and a slew of no-name actors and realistic camera work goes the extra lengths to reinforce this. Of course, one of the most famous and best examples of this kind of movie is the Spanish film Wreck, in which a TV crew become locked in a building as a deadly zombie virus breaks out. Only, this is a zombie virus with a difference, as it originates from a Vatican agent who was attempting to distill demonic possession into a medical disease. Instead of coming away with firm results, he accidentally transformed his findings into a virus that has taken over the local residents. The lead camera woman discovers the patient Zero in the last moments of the movie, forced to use the night vision on the camera in an attempt to see where this horribly deformed and dangerous creature is. Alas, she gives away her position and is dragged into the darkness, but not before we see her screaming face pleading for help. Intense, incredibly scary, and original in every sense of the word, Wreck is one of the very best in modern horror. Number 2, Videodrome. If any director is going to go all out and disturb your very sense of being for years to come, it has to be David Cronenberg, king of body horror and undisputed pervert of weird fleshy monsters, and no film is a better example of his distinguished style than Videodrome. When Max Wren becomes desperate for new programming on his television station, he begins a search for the most shocking content he could find, intent on delivering the strangest, most unsettling and vile shows for his hungry audience. Turns out that this comes at a price when he broadcasts Videodrome, a snuff TV program that induces brain tumours in its watchers, resulting in intense hallucinations and some seriously bizarre additions to the human body. In the end, Max is forced to kill himself to ascend in an attempt to take down Videodrome once and for all. First, it controlled his mind, then it destroyed his body. Sounds kind of like the average What Culture YouTube video to me. Long live the new flesh. Number 1, The Wicker Man. There's 2 classic versions of The Wicker Man. One is classic for its lasting impressions on psychological horror movies, an intense dive into one man's search for a missing girl that results in uncovering a fanatic pagan ritual. The other is classic because it has Nick Cage screaming about bees as a method of torture as his head is stuck inside a honeycomb helmet. Concentrating on the first one this time then, the original Wicker Man has an ending that leaves a lasting chill running down your spine, depicting the titular effigy burning into the sunset with our protagonist trapped inside. Failing to see his investigation into the missing child was actually a ruse, Police Sergeant Howie is taken by the residents of the island as a sacrifice to appease their old gods, desperately praying for comfort as he's burned alive on a giant pyre in front of a willingly sadistic group of islanders. Whilst we've had plenty of terrifying movies since, some gorier, some riddled with jump scares, and some far more brutal, there's nothing that compares to the deeply unsettling death of Howie through this religious extremism. There's a reason this film has lasted through the ages. That's everything for our list so far today, folks. What did you think, and also, what do you feel should be here? Do you think we should do a sequel list? Let us know in the comments below. Now don't forget you can get in touch with us over on Twitter at WhatCultureHorror, and you can get in touch with myself at Sean Ferrick on Twitter as well. Until I see you again, make sure you look after yourself. Thanks very much. Bye.